Yeah. Listen, a 35-hour work week in Korea, then probably they think you had half a week off, huh?
Hello, and welcome to the Auto Ethnographer. I'm John Stech, your host on this journey. We travel the globe to bring you stories about culture and the global automotive industry. Fasten your seatbelt and let's get started. Welcome to part two of the conversation with Benny Oeyen. Last week we talked about his experiences at Mazda Motor Europe, as well as at Chrysler Europe and Chrysler International in the United States. This week we're going to turn our attention to his experiences at Kia Motors Europe, as well as his adventure in China with General Motors China. So sit back, relax, and here we go. So, Benny, you worked with Chrysler in the US and in Europe, and one can argue that it was a challenger brand in Europe and pretty much everywhere else on Earth other than the NAFTA region. But then you made a jump to what one could say was definitely another challenger brand at that point in time, which was Kia. Kia has certainly come a long way since the early 2000s. But can you tell me a little bit about your experience there? Because that must have been a dramatic change from what you experienced at Chrysler.
Yeah, talking about the Challenger brand, indeed, John. I remember as if it was yesterday. It was 2008, late 2008, beginning 2009. I was in my office in Auburn Hills. I was the head of product strategy worldwide, and we were just before declaring Chapter 11. You remember that? Ford and sorry, not Ford, but General Motors and Chrysler had to go to Uncle Sam, to the government, the U.S. government, to ask for money in order to survive. And this was a change from Bush to Obama, I believe. And we were working with the czars there, and there were all kind of merger, which I cannot talk about, but the most crazy merger studies were done. And at the end, they basically decided we're going to help GM, but Chrysler has to find a foreign partner. And that was then Fiat that came. And so in the first studies, my team was heavily involved. Anyway, my phone rang. It was a headhunter from Frankfurt, Russell Reynolds. And they say, listen, we have this Challenger brand, as you said. And we want somebody to change the marketing there and the whole perception. And so we talked a little bit. And in one of my first interviews, they asked me, "What do you think about Kia?" And I asked them, "Listen, you're going to get it from me straight. Do you really want to know what I think about Kia?" They said, "Yep." I said, "They're butt ugly cars with bad quality, but they're dirt cheap." And he said, "Exactly right." And that's exactly the image that we have, and that is exactly what we have to move out of this perception area, because one day the Chinese are going to come and they're going to occupy this space. So very smart, forward thinking. And basically they said, well, we're changing everything, right? We're going to get more European design. So that the European Design Center in Frankfurt, they hired an Audi designer, a gentleman called Peter Schreier, who did the Audi TT, for example, the A6, etc., the A4, and he changed it from a very Asian Korean look, with a lot of chrome and bang and in your face, bling bling stuff, to very simplistic Audi Apple type design, where there is no bling bling at all and very simplistic. And if you look at Kias, they still look very much like that. So it was one thing. Secondly, they said we're going to do better engineering. We're hiring European engineers, etc., because this was for the European function. Excuse me. To do better road holding and everything that's important for the Europeans. Thirdly, we want to improve the quality. We're investing, we just built a brand new factory in Slovakia. And so when they flew me out there, I was used to Jefferson North assembly plant. When you walked in there, I thought I walked into a recording of a MTV video for gangster rappers, right? Very rough and F this and F that and things like that. And I walked into that Kia factory and I thought they produced yogurt or medicines or something like that. It was so clean. There was a wooden floor. They had their white things. It was like day and night, hyper modern, really very cool. And then they said, so we have the design, we have the engineering, we have the quality, and now we also have to change the marketing, and that should be you. And first I was a bit hesitant because, so how can I say, I have my contacts, and working as a non-Korean in a Korean company can have some challenges. But still, I thought, yeah, okay, this is a cool challenge. So I went in and looked at all that, and everything was fine. And I'll give you an example how different the Korean culture is versus Japanese, because I thought like, okay, I have this down, right? I know the Japanese inside out with my uh, Hiroshima experience and Mazda experience. They're kind of the same, right? Big mistake. Certain things are very similar indeed, right? It's Confucius who influenced their thinking, the hierarchy thinking, respect for elderly age, things like that. Is all the same, but many things are very different. As I said, how conservative and risk avoiding and very analytical till the very last detail the Japanese were. The Koreans are much different, very much more risk taking, very fast, and very aggressive. Let's go for it. So very interesting. So I'll give you a little example. So I arrived there in May 2009, and yeah, so we did big consumer clinics and things like that. Say, what do you think about Kia, right? What do you know? And some people were like, IKEA, is that the Swedish furniture store? They hadn't even heard of it, right? So that's one thing. Then if they heard of it, they said exactly what I said. Oh, they're ugly. No, I don't want to look at them. And we showed them the new concepts, right? The new design, and they were like, wow, that's our sexy cars, right? So that's very cool. Yeah, but then especially in Germany, the interior will be hard, scratchy plastic, typical Asian cheap stuff, right? Blah, blah, blah. So we showed them the inside. They go, oh wow, it's all padded and chrome rings and with leather stitching around the steering wheel and things like that. All very cool, very cool. Then they said, yeah, but it all looks good, but it's going to drive really bad. If I drive on the highway, it's going to rattle, it's going to be unstable. The wipers are going to vibrate, all these things that I like in Germany. And we said, no, let's do some test drives with some mules. We did that. And they were like, wow, this thing really works, right? So every single argument that they said why they shouldn't buy a Kia, we could objectively rebuke. Design, no, it is. The interior, here it is. The engineering, here it is. And then came the very last one, which was very difficult to rebuke. They said, yeah, but this is all fine, but they're not going to last long. After a couple of years, they're going to rattle. They're going to drive bad. I'm going to have mechanical problems. The parts are going to be expensive or not available. That's trust, right? Because it's future. You can't rebuke it now. So I was thinking like, what can we do to rebuke that? And then the idea that I had together with my boss there was, I want the longest warranty on the European market. It will take away the final argument. So we did a study. So the EU legal minimum is 2 years. So you need 2 years warranty by law in every EU country. That's an EU law or EU regulation. Some did 3. A few, I think Toyota and some countries, Hyundai did 5. And I said, I want 7 years warranty. That's what I want. So we went forward with that. The whole company in Seoul went on their back feet and said, you're totally crazy. Which to me was an indication that I was probably right. Right. So it encouraged me to go even further, because it's a big risk and it can become very expensive if your cars are indeed bad and start breaking down after 4, 5, 6 years, and you have to pay all this. The warranty costs will probably kill you. But we went forward to it. And then again, it's what I said before, is sometimes it's personal connections and it's how you're perceived. My boss there, because I was on the second level, we had 3 VPs in Europe, one for after sales, one for sales, and one for marketing and product planning, and that was me. So I also did all the communications, PR, advertising, TV ads, the whole enchilada, basically. And then I had an elder gentleman who was just before retirement, a Korean guy, Mr. S.Y. Kim, very career-long guy, and he knew the CEO, etc. I'll help you navigate to bring this crazy idea through the big hallways in Seoul in the headquarters. And he basically took me by the hand, and we went for it. And now comes the speed, right? This is a big one. So I started in May. We did the research in June 2009. I came to the conclusion in July, August, middle of August 2009, we told them this is our idea. One day later, they told us we are totally crazy, never going to happen. We started doing this in November, end of November 2009. It was approved in the board because this is a big, big one, right? It was approved. I already had TV crews ready in Prague, in Czechoslovakia, to do a very funny TV ad. You can actually look at it where it says 7 is better than 2. That's what big scientists came to the conclusions. It's actually very funny. And January 10 or 9 in 2010, we went live with a $30 million TV ad campaign all over Europe, and it basically took off from there. And I think this put Kia on the map. We started growing in a down market because the market in Europe was still suffering from the aftermath of the global financial crisis, right? Normally, the European car market has a SAR of about 15 million. It went down to 12 or 11.8. But Kia, we went up from 220,000 per year to over 300,000 in a down market. So we were the new kid on the block winning. The it was also transferable, or it is still transferable, this warranty. So it means when you buy a 4-year-old Kia, you have still 3 years warranty, which is more than a new Volkswagen, for example, or a new any car. That increased the resale value, which made us was a door opener for leasing rates to go into the company car and leasing market, which was another big deal. So listen, I'm very proud of that. It's still there. And I think Kia now is last year they sold 580,000 in Europe together with their sister brand with Hyundai, which is roughly the same. So over 1 million cars in the European car market. And Kia is right now, after Ferrari, the second most, at this moment, the second most profitable car brand in the world with the highest EBITDA margin. So they're doing really, really well, not only in Europe, globally, also in the United States, doing well. So yeah, I was part of that machine. But yeah, was the fun part and all the stuff that I talked about and all the successes, but it was very difficult. So the Korean way, as I said, is very aggressive, very fast. The first word I learned in Korea was pale pale, means quick quick, hush hush, and chop chop, like the French say. And it was like that. So you go, they work really hard, very diligent, and they really go for it. And well, yeah, you can see it. Man, I mean, the Korea in the mid 50s was still a poor country. The Korean War just started. They had hunger, basically. They had food shortages in the mid 50s. So they're 10 years behind of Europe after the Second World War to build up. And they came from nothing. And now look at Hyundai, Kia, Samsung, LG, really giant ones, and with a very small nation. And they're really going for it. Very successful, very admirable, but sometimes also not easy. A lot of cultural differences. The Asian culture in general is command and execute. The Korean, well, I say, is kind of army. The Asian ones, when the boss says something, you don't challenge the boss. You do it before. Maybe the Japanese call it nemawashi, means the meeting before the meeting. But in the meeting, you never challenge it. Where in America, you can disagree with people, or in the Western culture, that you don't do that. So I would say that's army. If that's army style of operating, the Asian culture, the Korean culture is U.S. Marine Corps. So it is when the lieutenant says we're going to take this hill, there is no debate club. Why this hill and which hill? You just take the hill, right? And that is really good if it's the right hill. If it's the wrong hill, they perfectly execute with blood, sweat, and tears something totally wrong, which hasn't happened, but it or not under my watch or while I was there. But also, I have to say, they are extremely flexible and can change a strategic plan on a dime if necessary. So they're I liked their business culture. Actually, it was not always difficult, not always easy to work for them because it was still a very dominant Korean culture. They were not international companies when I was there from 2009 till 2014. It was not an international or global company. There were Korean companies acting globally. And I was like the first wave. That was the first time that my level type of people were non-Koreans. So it was kind of an experiment, and you have all the friction with the old establishment who still wants to get control, or they didn't want to let go, and that sometimes gives some friction. But overall, it was fantastic. And I mean, look, if you just looked at the cars that they brought out, the Seat, the Sportage, the Sorrento. I mean, fantastic cars now also with their EVs. They have really good technology. They invest in their technology center, their tech center. There they have a special tech center. Now, Book it's called, for all future-oriented drivetrains. Already in 2010, they were talking about battery electric vehicles, researching it. They were looking at hydrogen vehicles. So they're very interesting company. And yeah, and so they're together with Hyundai, so they do platform sharing, component sharing, etc., but different brand possibilities, or positioning. Although that's maybe sometimes a little bit an issue because they fish a little bit in the same pond, right? So they they uh, they appeal to the same customers, but still, if you add them both up, as I said, over 1 million cars in Europe, that's quite remarkable if you see where they're coming from. Only 15 years ago, so very fast, really good. It's quite interesting.
How does that mesh up though in Europe? I can't think of two cultures being more different. In Europe, you have ever more discussions or actually implementations of 35-hour work weeks. And in South Korea, you have incredibly long work hours, dedicated to the office and working really in a very hard way. I'm not saying Europeans don't work; they're quite efficient,
No,
but
but it's
there's definitely
but
a
I agree.
mismatch.
Big time. Yeah. Listen, a 35-hour work week in Korea, then probably they think you had half a week off, huh? So it's very hard working. Although actually, I still have a lot of friends who regularly go there. Apparently, also with the new generation, etc., it's changing a little bit. They see it was a problem, but when I was there, it was incredible. So it's 8 o'clock in the morning. They're there, and if you go home at 8 p.m., they look at you as if you took half a day off. And then they still work, and then at 9:30 they all go out together to the Korean barbecue, and then they go drinking, etc., and they're home at midnight, and then the next day they go back and they come in on Saturdays and Sundays. So it's very hard working. Yeah, this was complicated. Yeah, especially in Germany. Germany, of all the Western countries, I would say works the least hours. That's official labor statistics. It's not just uh, something that I say to be interesting in the bar, in the pub. This is official numbers. They have the most vacation, etc. So in Germany, it was very normal on Friday afternoon, 2 p.m. If it's a sunny weekend, they're gone. So 2:30, and the Koreans would be sitting there till 8 p.m. even on a sunny Friday afternoon. Yeah, but you know what? They knew that, the Korean people who came to Europe, and they respected that. They were not like, "Why are you not like us?" I never heard that. So they respected it that we were different and we were doing different. And we also got things done. But sometimes, yeah, it leads to funny situations. I can give you some anecdotes. We all had coordinators. Coordinators were people officially they were put in place to help you discuss with the headquarter because their English is not good. That's BS. They're just shadow management, right? They sit on your shoulder and they look to what you were doing as a non-Korean. And these coordinators, they were sometimes sitting there and they would get a request from, I don't know, headquarter and say, I need this and this and this data. They don't have these data, these coordinates. They will have to ask me if, like, for example, ad spend per car line or something like that. What's the latest, whatever it might be. To ask me, I have to ask the people in the country. So we have to put that all together. This takes a day or something. And then you should do that. And if you ask it on a Friday afternoon at 4 p.m., all the local staff is gone and all the countries as well. The answer should be, sorry, we can't do that. We'll get back to you on Tuesday. That's the right rational answer. That answer doesn't fit in the Korean culture. There is no no. You will report it because the boss asked it by Sunday morning or by Monday morning. You can't call the European staff in on the weekend because they'll tell you, yeah, go and fly a kite. I'm not doing this, or it's just not done. So they make them up. They think they take some old figures. They then index it with they think, and then they report something. The most important was to report something that it's in time. And then these numbers that I didn't, then they don't tell you about it or vaguely, and you kind of forget about it. And then 3 weeks later or 3 months later, something like that, on the Geneva Motor Show, on the Frankfurt or Paris Motor Show, the top management flying, you would do big reviews, and I would present something on ad spend per car line. And then suddenly the CEO would go in his big binder and go, Benny, sorry, the numbers, because he got prepared. I have totally different numbers. You say it's like, I don't know, 800 per, I don't know, Sorrento. And here it says 1,100. And what is the, so I don't recognize these data. Where do these data come from? And then you would look around and you see all the coordinators suddenly having to do important SMS or looking at at their shoes. And it was like these funny moments where you see these cultural clashes, right? In the Korean culture thing, it's like you have to do this by then, even if it's impossible to do it in a good way. You do it fast, then in a mediocre way. It's okay. So that was funny. Then you correct it. This is now a very, how can I say, negative example. Don't get me wrong that I'm saying that there's a lot of fake numbers, but this is a real typical example of a cultural difference, right? And that was quite interesting. But somehow we found a way to work together. Listen, I was also stationed in Germany, and as you said, the German culture is very different. We had a lot of Germans, but still, it was very international operation. I was very proud of it. I still remember what a diverse team that I had. In Chrysler Europe, I had, I think, a team of 35 people, 35-ish people, and I still remember the number. We had 13 different passports. So from Finland, Spain, Italy, there was an Indian guy, there was an American, a Thai guy, Romanian, Bulgarian, all kind of stuff, a Brit, and that actually made it fun. So yeah, very very interesting times, and nice to be part of an absolute. So when I growing. Franchise that came from nothing, from 220,000 per year. And when I left, we were over 300,000. When I left 10 years ago, now they're over 500,000. So you can see the progression in a stale market. Even when I was there, it was still going down a little bit because it was recovering. The market was recovering from the global financial crisis. So quite interesting if you do the right thing. That just shows if you have the right offer, the right product, that hits what people want, and you offer that with a good honest price. It shouldn't have to be super discount, but an honest price. You will thrive. You will thrive for sure.
And did they listen with open ears with regards to the requirements for Europe? Because I think there are some models that are unique to Europe that are not sold in the United States, for example.
Very, very much. Europe was a big part of their portfolio. Uh, Listen, Korea is a small market. That was the opposite of Chrysler. Chrysler had a huge domestic market, and they could afford to be like, yeah, whatever kind of thing, which they didn't. But somehow, hey, Benny, we sell 2 million cars here. What are you coming here with your 200,000 international, right? So that was a little bit the thing. In Korea, this was not. Korea is a tiny market. Right? The Korean market is, I don't know, 1 million cars or 2 million cars or something like that. It's small. Europe and America together are 30 million, and then China now is another 30 million. So, or 25 million. So it was very different. So they had to be more outward looking, even more than the Japanese were, because the Japanese have also a medium sized domestic market, I would say, with about 5 million, something like that. The Korean is tiny. Korean market. So you can't survive on Korea alone. Their mindset was export. We need to export and sell to other countries to be thriving here internally, and bring the money here, have investments here, have employment here, and grow the company. So yeah, they were very early. They understood that. They looked at well, China is. Everybody has to go to China because the Chinese government built that up over time with tariffs and things like that. But in Europe and America, they said we need to be there, and they did exactly the same strategy. They looked in Europe at two different countries, but put the plants close to them so they can have one supplier park. So, for example, Kia chose Slovakia, and Hyundai chose Czech, but they're very close to each other. And then you have a common supplier park. And then you can get subsidies from one government, from the Slovakian government, and you can get some subsidies from the other government. I think in America they did that the same, not on a country level, but on a state level. But Hyundai and Kia are in two different states, but not far from each other. And they get local subsidies here, they get local subsidies there, and put a supplier park right in the middle. Very well planned and disciplined execution also of that. I would say that they're really good, the Koreans. That's a nation to watch and companies to watch, I would say.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think with the electric vehicle revolution, if you want to call it that, uh, it's interesting to see how Kia and also Hyundai, but maybe possibly to a slightly lesser degree, have taken a real leading role in the development of electric vehicles, which I think was unexpected. It was not something you would have predicted 10 years ago.
It was unexpected for people like you, and the outside was not unexpected for me. 10 years ago already, in 2010, I visited there. They have a big R&D center, a big like General Motors has the Warren Tech Center. You know, they have one right for all their stuff. But then they have a special one. It was called Nabuk, was maybe 30 kilometers away. A whole campus only on future drivetrains. Already back in 2010, battery electric vehicles and hydrogen vehicles and all kind of stuff that they're looking at. So very forward looking and ready to put money in there as well. So yeah, quite amazing. But indeed, they have really great EV technology. I think also, well, China is a whole different level. We can talk a little bit about China afterwards. But from the non-Chinese, they're probably in the lead for battery technology. If you see LG Chem and things like that, they're very and also with their vehicles. So Kia and Hyundai have great EV vehicles with great range, fast charging, good technology. Yeah, that kind of stuff that will help people overcome the step to electrification. Because there is still a big step, and we can talk about that a little bit if you want as well. There's still big steps to be done. It's not going to be 100% BEVs with a snap of a finger. It's a long trajectory, I would say.
Correct. It's a long path. We didn't go from horses to cars with a gas station on every corner in a
No,
decade.
no, exactly.
So, Benny, it's about 2014, and you've been with Kia for about 5 years in Europe, and then you had the opportunity to join General Motors, and you had expressed an interest in China. China was the hottest thing. It was growing relentlessly. Companies had been setting up their operations there for the past decade, and this opportunity presented itself. How did that happen? And I'd be interested about your first impressions on how different was it working, in China, but for a Western company, but living in Shanghai.
How did this happen? It was like it often happens. It's through personal connections. A good friend of mine, an ex-colleague of mine, was working at the time at European headquarters of General Motors, Opel in Frankfurt, and we just discussed a little bit. And he circulated my CV, and one thing led to the other. And before you know it, they offered me to be the vice president of product planning and product strategy in China, which is quite a big deal at that time. Now China has changed a little bit after COVID, etc. But you have to think back in 2013, 2014. This was 2014. China was the hot ticket in town. If you said in any car company or any company in the world, we have a senior or mid-level or senior position, which was the case in my case, available in Shanghai, you had 50 people lining up at the door of HR who want to go. That's very different now. And now there's nobody. There's very young people or very old people, but people with families don't go anymore because they're afraid something might happen, or there was just like this. Oh my God, with what happened with COVID and dynamic zero policies there. Anyway, so this was the hot ticket. So there were HR policies in place. I know in some OEMs that if you have no China experience, you can never get a C-suite job. That's it. It's logical. It's the largest car market in the world and fast growing, etc. So if that's for cars now, but it's probably the largest market for anything in the world. And if you don't have exposure, you don't know your largest market. I mean, then you can't be a C-suite guy, right? Or C-suite person, I should say. So anyway, that was quite interesting. So, and it was China that attracted me. It was really, really China that attracted me. And I knew the American way. I knew Auburn Hills, etc. So General Motors, there's a lot of similarities. It's different in a way, but in the big scheme of things, from 30,000 feet, this is kind of the same. The platform teams and the engineers and the way the development system works. And yeah, on a business trip, I didn't even need GPS because I can drive around to Detroit, Southeast Michigan area without anything. It all helps. So yeah, so I went there, but very different scale. And the scale was just different. So I just give you an example. I told you when I started with Kia, we were selling 220,000 cars a year. Then we were selling just over 300,000. And I remember us celebrating in Kia, having a celebration because we hit the 300,000 mark at a certain moment. And then I went to GM, and we were also selling 300,000 cars, but it was per month. So it was a very different, like what? Very different constellation. Many factories, 60,000 employees, very, very different level of operations, giant operations. And with joint ventures, right? Very different also. You had a joint venture. That's how China set up their business. Was a long-term plan that started 20 years before, something like that. You had to they first protect their market, right? Because that was the only thing they had on offer, is their large market with high tariffs. Then you come and produce there. Then they say you can produce here, but it has to be a joint venture. And then the government said, but just production there is not enough. You have to also do value added stuff here, like R&D. So we put up a huge R&D, also a joint venture. And at the time, by the way, you can never be the boss. Only 49%. 51 is the minimum for the Chinese partner. 49 for the Western partner. So Volkswagen, General Motors, we set up giant operations there with wind tunnels and design centers and labs and things like that. And we taught them everything. We taught them everything they know because they didn't know anything and they wanted to go fast. And that's the advantage, I would say, of the political and the society and the economical system in China. Don't get me wrong, I'm not propagating anything, I'm just analyzing, is that you can do long-term stuff. You don't have every 4 years an election and one goes right and then the other one goes left and says the previous one was totally ridiculous and then the other one comes in. You don't have all this razzmatazz. In China, it's very long term, and then you can go fast and create wealth and create industrial might very quickly because you have consistent policies, and the government and the companies work hand in hand and not against each other and not changing direction every 4 or 5 years. So that was the big advantage there. But it was amazing. So we were one of the market leaders, General Motors, there with 15% combined with all the brands, with 5 brands, Chevrolet, uh, Cadillac, Buick, which was a big brand there, and then 2 local brands, Wuling and Baojun. And with them, we had 15% market share. Volkswagen had also 15% market share. And they were both partnering with SAIC, SAIC. So that was that is a giant company that covered at that time 30% of the market. So very interesting to work with the Chinese partners, but very different with Chrysler Europe, where we had basically American vehicles adapted a little bit and did it here. Here it was like also the Chinese had a big investment, had a big say. There was a lot of tension back and forth. The Chinese wanted to develop everything for China. The Americans still wanted to have world cars or world platforms and sharing as much as possible, which is logical from both sides. And there was always this tension, right? So quite interesting. But it was basically a very profitable business for the American car and the Western car companies. But I remember, and I was not, after that, I was not very popular, or at that moment, I was not very popular with the American management, General Motors standing up, doing a presentation, which is something that I like and I'm pretty good at, I should say, about the motor show, the Shanghai Motor Show, to all the staff. And there were like 200 Chinese. And I had one slide and I called it, The Red Dragon is Coming. And I predicted back then, that was 2015 or something like that, I saw the first seeds of these Chinese manufacturers, how they were getting better with their own brands, their design, etc. I said, this is something you will not be able to stop. these guys are going to come. And then the CFO and my boss at the time, oh, Benny, you're so pessimistic. We're going to sell Buicks and Chevrolets forever. Well, I think again, look at it now. All the Western manufacturers have been basically booted out of the top 10 and are really struggling because the Chinese brands and the Chinese technology, and especially with BEVs, is coming up. So very interesting. From a cultural point of view, I thought China was fascinating. Again, very different to Japan and very different to Korea. In certain ways, more modern. And this is shocking because you think like, oh my God, a communist country, they've been asleep forever. And that's like the common perception. It's not the communism sometimes. I'm not a fan of communism at all, but has some, like I said, everything is yin and yang, pros and cons, has some advantages. One of the advantages is the position of the woman. In Korea and in Japan, when I went to Korea, even I looked around me, a lot of very good looking young girls, but never once 30, 35, you didn't see any. They were all guys. They come there, they work, they meet, they get married, and then the women stays at home. Very 1950s traditional way of thinking. In China, you sit across very senior people from psych with 50-year-old women. So I kind of liked it. I thought that was very interesting aspect. And that's because of their communist heritage, where the communist philosophy was you have to work for the state and to make China great and to make society great, and everybody has to contribute, so also women, which is actually quite logical. So I thought that was quite interesting. Second difference was I felt is they were very open to learn. Very, very, very open. They were very willing to learn. They knew they came from nothing. They knew they have to go fast, and they were willing to take input from everywhere. So you never heard like, yeah, but this is why we do it in China and we don't care. So maybe sometimes you heard that a little bit in the Japanese way or the Korean way. In China, you never had this arrogance like we know everything. I found them quite open, but also very focused. And then, the hard work, the hierarchy, when the boss says something, that's it, and you do it. That is the same. That runs through them. But yeah, I really liked it there. And at the time, it was really fun to be there. When I was in global calls with GM, you had somebody in my position in North America, in Detroit, in South America, in Sao Paulo, then with Opel, who was at the time still part of the GM empire, was in Frankfurt, and then me in Shanghai. And in many, like in Europe, we were like, in America was like, yeah, which plants are we gonna like, how are we gonna be able to fill it? In Europe was like, which plants are we gonna close? And in China is how many plants are we going to build, right? So it was a very different, it was still on the up. Everything was booming. It changed also a little bit, but you could tell already. And yeah, a few observations when I came there. So you think about China like, oh my God, they're going to be so behind. It's going to be primitive, etc. Forget it. Even in 2014, I already went to China business tours before when you live there. You think you're so advanced with your American way of living, and then you see there's a whole world out there that you don't even know. I still remember, like, oh, here, credit card. You take credit cards, right? And they went like, oh, no, no, no. And I thought, oh my God, it's going to be cash. No, 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 no. They already paid by phone. An American in 2015 had no idea what it was paying by phone. Like, oh, we thought we were so advanced with our credit cards. Chinese were that's already an old hat. So digitally extremely advanced, very into that. And that is now translating into the vehicles. Huh? If you look at Chinese vehicles, you could see that already coming there. The Chinese have never had this ownership experience where everybody owns a car, etc., because they were too poor when we already had that in Europe and in America. And they immediately went to like mobility 2.0, right? They own cars, they do, but they use a lot of Uber is not there, but they have their own Ubers, let's call it like that. They're users of that. Uber Eats, etc. But this was not existing yet in the US. It was already there. They were called Sherpas. You could order online, and you had this orange colored overall people on their little electric motorbikes, and they went to any restaurant that you want and brought you the food at home and things like that. Things that I've never seen before. So they were this digital connection with the real world and service economy, etc. They're very, very into that. And you can see that now in their cars. I mean, they learned everything from the traditional car making from Volkswagen, General Motors, and all the others. And they're now good at it. They hire good designers, they have great design, etc. But you should see the interfaces of the Chinese cars now. If you go, you should really go to the Shanghai Motor Show. It now just passed. It was in April, but to other motor shows and look at some of these Chinese vehicles. It's phenomenal. It's screens everywhere. It's interactive. You can do whatever you want. They're really, really advanced. So they're software defined. So you have a software as the base and you build a car around it, where the European way it's normal and the American way is you have a vehicle and then you add some software and digital services to it. And it's really, really amazing. And to be honest, last time I was in China was in December. I was at a World New Energy Vehicle conference in Hainan Island, and there was like it morphed into a mini motor show. And there were all these brands. There's like every month there seemed to be like a new. It seems like Detroit in the 1910s. There were like new brands popping up left and right. The same is true in China, and you see some of these vehicles. Then there was also Audi and BMW and Mercedes, and you go there, and honestly, you feel like you're going back in time. So and the American brands didn't even bother to show up, to be honest. And so I think we have to be very careful in the West. We have to look at what's going on there, because what the customers like there, to a certain extent, the customers also like here. It's a young generation. It's a digital generation. It's a generation that grew up with smartphones. That are the future buyers, and you have to make this very interconnected and working very well. And then, yeah, they have the advantage of not having to do that with internal combustion engines, although they're pretty good at that as well. But they're not hyper competitive. But that whole thing goes away when you go into BEVs and also fuel cell vehicles. They have 5 brands already with fuel cell vehicles, and that could also become a market reality. So very interesting to work in China, also to live there, to travel there, to get to know the country. And if you can, I can highly recommend a trip to China, and especially visit Shanghai. I call it the new New York. It's very cool.
No, it's fascinating. It's hard to imagine how quickly the country has developed, right? When you talk about it's the last 25 to 30 years, the dramatic changes that they've experienced there. Speaking of change, you've gone through 4 completely different companies, 4 completely different brands at different stages in their development. Which ones left the biggest impression on you? I mean, what have you kept and taken to heart from these different experiences? And I know this is a really difficult question.
That is a very tricky question. I think all of them had a place in time in my life, which were very important. The companies, the countries, etc. But I would honestly say, from a pure company point of view, it was a Chrysler. I really liked working at Chrysler Europe, and my time in Auburn Hills, also when I was the managing director in Switzerland. That was just a very good time. And that doesn't mean all the others were not good times. Kia was fantastic. China was fantastic. Mazda was great, but I was young, good looking, and poor. And so it was very different from now. I'm still poor, but the 2 others have gone. But yeah, so it had all their place in time. But Chrysler was very special because it was this American behemoth, very America orientated, and then trying to make them adopt and expand the international business was actually very cool. And I just liked the culture there. I thought the culture at Chrysler was fantastic. And as I said, I'm always had a very special place in my heart for America and everything Americana, and that was as Americana as it got. So yeah, I loved it a lot.
Oh, that's fantastic. It's certainly a different experience in each of the four locations or four different companies. So as we start to wind down the episode, Benny, I just wanted to see if you had any kind of final words that you'd like to imbue upon the audience, something that you wanted to share from the heart with them that you thought is key to the successes that you've had in these four different companies, four different dramatically different cultural experiences.
My advice would be, and my motto in life is and looking back, and I had a very fantastic professional life. I couldn't, I mean, if I would have to do it all over again, I would do it exactly the same. The first thing I would say to younger people is follow your heart. Do something that you really like. I have been a car guy and a car kid since I was super young. I was driving on my little bicycle in my shorts in Germany. And on Tuesday or Wednesday, Automotive and Sport came out, and I had 5 Deutschmarks from my mother or my father. I bike to the little kiosk and then I could read this for a whole week and all the articles and it was just fantastic. Cars. I just love cars and mobility and the whole thing that comes with it. And then to be able to work in that is just fantastic. Then you just go for it, right? And you give it your all. And yeah, so that's one thing. The second thing I would say is um, don't be afraid in your career. Don't be afraid to jump. uh, I did a lot of jumps, right? That's quite something, to uproot a family from Belgium and go to Auburn Hills. Then from Auburn Hills, we went to Zurich, Switzerland. I became the managing director of Chrysler in Switzerland. Then back to Auburn Hills. Then from Auburn Hills to Frankfurt, working for the Koreans, and from Frankfurt to Shanghai, and then from Shanghai to London. All this with kids growing up, etc. But it all works. They're fine. Everybody's fine, and actually, it works. So don't be afraid to jump. Don't be too conservative. And the third point I would like to say is really reflecting upon my life and all my experiences. And um, the end of the day, people are people. We are all the same. We all want the same. We have the same values. We want to, or the same goals in life, I should say. We want to be happy. I think everybody wants it, regardless which culture. We want to be happy. We want to have a good relationship with our partners or spouses, etc. And we want our children to be healthy, to be happy, to become good people. We want our children to do well. We want our parents to be healthy and have a long and healthy relationship with each other. That I found is regardless which culture you work in with, it's the same. So at the end, we all have these shared human values, and yeah, just be open-minded. Don't always think that your way is the best way and that's the way everybody should do it. That is a very medieval way of thinking, and it doesn't bring you forward. There's good and bad in everything, in every culture, in every way of doing. There's pros and cons, and try to look for the good stuff in different ways of doing, in different cultures, in different corporate cultures, in different country cultures, etc., and family cultures and general country cultures, and try to look for the combination of these. Right? I was talking before with the Germans analyzing themselves to death. Before, because of all the details, which is very good, but sometimes makes you slow, right? And then the Americans sometimes go, okay, right, let's go. And what if you can combine these things, the fastness with the depth, other things, the long-term view of the Asian way of doing things. So I think there is good stuff to be found all over the world. Working with different cultures is fascinating. I would say try to get an international career. And if you don't get an international career, try to travel for your job or travel privately. Go in with an open mind and open eyes and ears, and try to look for good things in all the different aspects and cultural aspects of life on the globe, and try to combine them into something good. It's a fascinating world out there, And the world is much bigger and much more fascinating than the ecosystem that you are operating in. That would be my wise words at the end of this conversation.
No, those are definitely heartfelt words, and you're absolutely correct. The world is much more exciting when you go out and see it. I think with that, I will wind down the episode, and I want to thank you, Benny, for joining us today. I am very sure that the listeners have enjoyed the two episodes that feature your vast experience and how you talk about it in a very entertaining way. So thank you very much for joining.
Thank you very much.
Well, with that, I want to thank the listeners for tuning in this week, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, keep on driving. Thank you for joining us on today's journey. Please remember to like and subscribe to the Auto Ethnographer and leave us a rating or comment. For more information, visit our website at auto-ethnographer.com. You can also follow on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.